What did you want to be when you grew up?
What did I want to be when I grew up? I'm not sure I ever really had a life plan. I would probably say something that I did a placement when I was a student, and I did it on campsites in France. I wasn't taking languages. I just managed to spawn a placement abroad, and it was a campsite, and I was called a responsable. So I was the campsite host for a British camping company. So you, as a customer, would self-drive to Brittany, and you would stay in one of our tents, and they were quite nice tents, had fridges and cookers and stuff. But it was quite a short drive, so I think there was quite a lot. So I think a lot of customers thought that because they were in France, the weather would be amazing. But actually, it's just off the south coast of Britain, so the weather was not amazing. And but it was quite a cheap holiday, I suppose. So people were putting their toe in the water for foreign holiday. But I think something that really got to me was how important that fortnight was for quite a lot of the families that came to stay. And I'm sure you're aware, camping in the rain is really not much fun. And I kind of thought, I'm not sure that I wanted a job that I would want to be away from so much that even camping in the rain felt like, better than being at work. So I did kind of make a subconscious decision to not do anything that I didn't enjoy. And it probably also coincided with not earning much money in the jobs that I've done. But I've been kind of okay with that, I think. So the arts generally is not particularly well paid. There are a few people who make a lot of money from it, but by and large, the foot soldiers don't. So I don't think it was actually a career I had in mind, but it was certainly a kind of a vocation, I suppose, in terms of work-life balance. And I think there's been 15 months that I haven't enjoyed working in 50 years. So that's not, 45 years. So not bad. But yeah, to answer your question, it's not a footballer, it's not an astronaut, it's not Prime Minister, none of the above. But yeah, I suppose, just being happy felt really important from quite a young age.
Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, a show about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. You're listening to episode 28 and to my guest Chris Lloyd. This is another Zoom interview recorded on the 5th of October 2021. Hello! It's been a while, hasn't it? Well, strap in, there has been stuff going on, and you will get to hear it all soon. First, though, we're going to round out Series 2, for now, with this episode. This will be followed by a special bonus episode to kick off Series 3. Episodes 29 and 30, which are still planned as part of Series 2, will hopefully come out at some point soon. I'm still waiting for clearances on those 2 interviews, though, so keep your fingers crossed for me on those. These early episodes have trained me in making podcasts, and in making this podcast in particular. These first 2 seasons of Working Hours have allowed me to learn about the show and about how to make this show, what the show is and what I want it to be. I have made a variety of different episodes, heavily edited ones. I've released uncut interviews. I've started episodes off with static introductions. I've started them with cold opens. I've tried different music. And I currently seem to have settled down into asking pretty much a set bunch of questions, for now at least. I know what I want from Working Hours, and hopefully by 28 available episodes that are free to listen to, you should too. I do have more episodes recorded, and I have a backlog of editing and transcription to do. I'm very, very behind with it all. It's been a real crawl to reach 30 episodes. There's lots of reasons for that, but a major one is support. I really need support now. I need to get to 50 episodes as soon as I can, and because this project is completely reliant on learners in order for me to make the show at all, I really, really need you, Leeds, to be my guest. Listeners will come and find the show, but not without you to listen to. So once again, the deal is you need to be from Leeds or in Leeds, and you just need experience of working, or at least an opinion on work. If you're not in the paid workforce, I'd still love to hear from you. So that's it. That's all you need. You can appear anonymously on the show, or you can use it to promote yourself or even your business. You can do it for posterity, for fun, or just to think about your job out loud in a new way, or for any other reason. Tell me your reason for being on Working Hours. Drop me an email at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. Add a short bio and some suggestions of your availability into your email, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So the thing about getting in more interviews more often is that there will be more content to deal with, and so elements of my production will need to change because of that. I can't keep doing working hours the way I have been doing it if I want to get to 1,000 episodes. So my work on working hours needs to change so that I can hit the first 50 episodes, so that I can get those out to listeners and do that in a timely and consistent manner. I need to do that in order to ramp up production to reach the first 100 and then 250 and then 500 and eventually the 1000th episode in 2030. The first 2 seasons, the first 2 years of working hours have followed a release pattern that you might have clocked, but this has held back the release of episodes. I have had episodes ready to go that I couldn't release because I was waiting for clearance for another episode, just in order to keep my release pattern. And this has meant that I have had to have an erratic release schedule for the first 2 years of this show's life. This does nothing to service my listenership, who don't know when and where they should expect to find a new episode of Working Hours, and I am sorry about that. I won't be able to offer any regularity to publishing, though, until I have a successful funnel running for getting interviews coming in at a high enough rate that I'm able to release episodes consistently for listeners. I have to stack these so that I have some waiting to go, and waiting for approval on others won't slow me down too much. When I started Working Hours, I imagined it being much more critical of work, labour and working. I expected to speak to more people who didn't like work. I imagined whistleblowers telling me shocking tales, and I imagined people yearning for better roles and better pay. Instead, so far, I have found that nearly all my guests really enjoy their work, and that's great. It's made for great interviews and conversations for me, but I do wonder if I'm really just limited in my type of guest. What if I'm stuck within the tiny social media bubble that I've managed to eke out through 1 part intent and 2 parts the random alchemy of the magical algorithms? Am I only reaching online people? Am I overrepresenting self-employed people? And what if I never get to interview a shelf stacker from Asda? I do believe in this show now in a way I couldn't have in the last 2 years, because now it's there. There is a show. It is something now. And although it's small and only growing slowly, that is happening. Working Hours is a podcast that's now well on its way to its first 30 episodes, its first 500 unique listeners, and its first 1,000 downloads. And that's not a big thing, but it is something, and it is something that has grown and will continue to do so. So what about you? What are you here for? I told you mine, now it's your turn. I'm asking you listening, yes you, what do you want out of this? What do you want to hear more of or less of? I have mentioned Patreon and donations at various points on this show, but I haven't really pushed that up until now. So here is how it actually is. I need to clear 300 quid a month on this show to make it possible for it to continue over the long term, and I need to do that as soon as possible. I was hoping I could do this through donations and Patreon memberships. I would still like to do so. However, the fact of the matter is that I cannot increase my production and output for this show until I can reach that minimum financial goal. If I can reach that amount, then I can increase my production and output so that I can get to being able to putting out a show every week. From there, I want to get up to 2 shows a week, which is going to be necessarily towards the end of this decade when that happens, and this project, in order for me to actually hit my goal of 1,000 episodes. If I can find a way to get to 300 quid a month for this show as soon as possible, then I can start getting out more episodes to listeners more often, find more new listeners, and really start growing this audience and this show. Now, podcast advertising is a very trendy area, and the gold spot of any podcast advertising is an in-show ad read. So if there were or are any Leeds businesses that would be interested in podcast sponsorship opportunities or paying for ad reads on the show, then I would be really interested in hearing from you right now. As it's getting easier to make this show, it's also getting harder to make the show. I'm saying all of this because currently I'm deciding many things about how I want the show to feel, be, and sound going forward, and also what I will need to do to keep making it and how I am going to edit and produce the show. I'm trying to decide if I want to keep it loose and chatty, make it more professional, more political, less political. Do I want to edit at the level I have been, or let it be more raw and real? It's a documentary, but it's also something my guests might want to use to promote themselves or their work. I don't need to endorse anybody I interview, and that wouldn't be right for Working Hours to do that, but the show does allow for self-promotion for my guests. Working Hours is a show about our similarities and the differences in that shared being. We are all leads and we all work, even those who don't actually do. Working Hours wants to illustrate these differences as we find them in one city at one time. It's a show that wants and intends to be as truthful about our current social arrangements as those arrangements will allow us to be. So I have questions to answer, and if you would be so kind, you can help me with those questions. Or not, I will find answers. Do you want more of an intro for my guests, by my guests, or from my guests? Or am I providing you with enough detail? Do you like being able to fill in some of the blanks for yourself, or do you want the picture painted for you more? Do you like the discovery element of this show, or do you want to be led by it more? Do I need to work more to explain things, or are you following along fine with whatever's being said? Are you happy with the quality? Are you happy with the quality? Are you happy with the quality of the Zoom calls? Do you want to hear the sound of face-to-face recordings on the show again? How do you feel about fails or glitches from Zoom chats in the episodes, background sounds? Do they add authenticity or take you out of the chat? Does there need to be more of me or less of me in the show, in the interviews? Do the questions and how I ask them need to be more tied down, or do I need to go back to a more improvisational style? Do you want to hear me thank the guests on the recording, or do you like them having the final word in the interview? Do you like the varied length of the shows? Do you like the longer ones? Do you like them shorter? Have you listened to more than one show? If so, why? What made you come back? I really like the cold opens. I like the format at the moment, and I'm leaning more towards less editing on forthcoming episodes, but I would love to hear what anyone else has to say on these matters. There's a lot of deciding to do here. If you want to help me with any of that, then send your thoughts to workinghourspod@western-studios.com. Anyway, that's the big babble from me there, and I don't usually like to say so much on here, but I need to get that out to whoever is listening to the show. Okay, so let's get into this episode. Chris Lloyd is a producer with Red Ladder Theatre Company and has been with them for over 10 years. Red Ladder originally started in London, coming out of radical 1960s agitprop theatre, and they continue to still put on new and original theatre in both traditional and in non-traditional venues here in Leeds in the 2020s. Chris is still in constant awe of the talent he has to work with at Red Ladder. We talk about what is settling down to be the usual working hours questions now, discussing working in theatres through our changing times, climates, trade relations, and strategies to dealing with global pandemics. To find out more about Red Ladder Theatre, go to www.redladder.co.uk or follow them at Red Ladder on Twitter or facebook.com/Red Ladder Theatre. If you disagree with anything on this episode, especially me, then get yourself on the show. Unless you've nothing to do with Leeds, of course, in which case then just shush, I guess. Or you can sign up to the £5 non-loiner Patreon tier, and then I'll listen to whatever you have to say and reply to it too. So be a mensch and go to patreon.com/workinghourspod right now and sign up to help me record 1,000 loiners over this decade as they tell me, what is it that you do now?
So what is it that you do now then?
So my title is producer for Red Ladder Theatre Company, and that term has, well, I think when I first started working in the arts, that term was called administrator. Then it became general manager, then it became chief exec, and then it became producer. I think the role encompasses all the things that facilitate putting the show on stage, I suppose. So contracting, money, fundraising, auditing, all the kind of procurement and invoicing that goes with a small business. And it's supporting all the creative functions that get put together to make a show, I suppose, and the logistics of making sure rehearsal space is booked, the tour is booked, people get paid on time, people eat, people don't get abused. So policies, risk assessments. Yeah, it's all the bits really that I suppose as a customer you wouldn't really see in one of our shows, but it's all those bits that go into making it hopefully pleasurable to work for us.
Is that still pleasurable for you though? It sounds like a lot of form filling and a lot of bureaucracy that you maybe didn't want to sign up for.
Well, I suppose when I was younger, I worked in London, worked at a theatre in London. They would do a staff pantomime every year. And I did that a couple of years, and it was the most nerve-wracking thing I ever did. And it would be a short, cabaret style turn that would last maybe 4 minutes, and I would dread it for the rest of the year. So I have a huge respect for A, actors, but B, people who are creative. And I suppose I get vicarious pleasure, lots of vicarious pleasure by seeing how brilliant some of the creatives who work, some of the writers, some of the designers, some of the acting, direction, all of those component parts that go into making a good show. I don't really have that skill set, but I like to think that I can meld a team together that produce more than the sum of the parts, really. So, yes, I mean, running a small company, very bureaucratic. It's probably, I mean, we are funded by the Arts Council, which is amazing, but comes with that is a lot of monitoring, a lot of evaluation, which is fine. I mean, it's public money and it's right, but it's probably, for the money we get, it's probably not particularly less arduous than it would be if we got 10 times the money. So a bit like, your payroll, for instance, whether you've got 2 people or 20 people, it's not 10 times harder to do 20 people than 2. So I think, yes, there is a lot of bureaucracy. Yes, there is a lot of, I suppose you could call it jumping through hoops, but we are in possession of public funds. I'm very fortunate to be in that position. So I don't really see people can grumble about that too much. Maybe half the administration would be good, but hey, not for half the money though. So
yeah. So how did you get into it? How did you sort of come to Red Ladder, and how did you actually get into theatre and the producing side then?
When I was at school, I went to the grammar school in Leeds, which was then where the University Business School is now. So Clarendon Road, and I used to walk through the university past what was the Playhouse. Used to be part of the university back then. In the university sports hall, I think. So I used to work there on afternoons and evenings, selling bars and tearing tickets and watching lots of plays. And then when I was older, worked behind the bar and in the catering bit, and I just loved the environment. I just really loved the environment of people coming to my place of work to enjoy themselves. It was quite refreshing. People still moan, it's Yorkshire, but I really liked that environment where by and large people were doing a job they really loved, and being paid to do it, which was great. And also, by and large the customers were there to be entertained, and I didn't have to sell them anything. It wasn't, and there was no stress involved in it. By and large it was a very collaborative work environment, if you like. People enjoyed buying what we were selling, and we didn't have to force them to do that. They were there under their own free will. So I mean, I probably started there when I was 15 or 16, selling sweets and stuff, and then I worked behind the bar with Mark Ullman for a bit. He used to work there. And then when I left school, I was thinking I was done with education. Till I worked a bit, and I thought, no, I'm done with working. I'll try and go to college. So I applied really late to go to Leeds Polytechnic, as was Leeds Beckett now. Sorry. I did a business degree there, which I thought was a great idea because it gave me a ground in lots of different disciplines. Then I was go for a job, and they say, "Why did you do business studies?" It's actually really transparent. You had no clue what you really wanted to do. So I kind of got bit in the bum then. But my sister started working at theatre in London, and she said, "Oh, there's a box office job going if you want to come down to London." And I thought, well, why not? So I stayed at that theatre for 7 years, and then I worked my way up to be kind of front of house managing and in control of the bars and all the public areas. So health and safety and all the kind of public facing stuff. And then I left there and went to work in another theatre in London for a year, and then I went travelling for 3 years. So, but by then I theatre, not entertainment, definitely theatre was my kind of chosen vocation. And when I came back I lived in Spain for 3 years, came back not doing anything to do with theatre, got a job in West Cumbria overlooking the Irish Sea, which was a great job. I loved that. It was like having your own pub, really. It's a tiny theatre, and you were like the landlord, really. People knew you because there was only 2 of us worked there, and a whole raft of volunteers which kept the place afloat. And it was a multi-arts discipline, so there was classical music, there was folk music, there was film, there was theatre, there was tribute bands, music. So it was great. I really liked working there and made a lot of friends. And the hours were long, but that was really rewarding. And again, huge wealth of talent required to put on the stage, and there was a really active youth theatre, and it was great seeing the kids kind of get the bug. And I think something really profound there. I remember this lad was in the youth theatre, and quite a tall and gainly lad, really nice, but he had a profound stutter. And I said earlier about the staff pantomimes, they scared the living daylights out of me. But this lad, when he was on stage, his stutter would go. I mean, it was incredible. He was a brilliant actor, and I don't know how he did it. I don't know, by being someone else, maybe. I've never seen how the neurons worked in his brain to try and divorce the two. But I mean, it was so just little wins like that along the way are just magical, I think. Then I moved to Wakefield Theatre Royal, stayed there a little while, a little stint at Leeds Playhouse on maternity cover for someone, and then the Red Ladder job came up, which I'd never seen anything by them, but they were a well-established theatre company, and they offered me a job, so that was a bonus at that stage. And I'd never worked for a producing theatre company before. I'd always worked in a building that kind of bought in work rather than made it. So it was brilliant seeing it from the other side and seeing a project from a very small seed turn into a big production. It's always been great. So that's how I've come to be at Red Ladder. And it's 15 years ago now I started. So and never a dull day.
My initial thought was maybe there's a period of time where all through that, I'm guessing that you're able to see shows where you're in all these venues and you can go in and you get to see them, and maybe not as many times as you want, but enough. And I'm thinking as you go through the process, maybe you're drawn more away from being able to see the shows. But it sounds like they've been pretty present throughout, because moving to Red Ladder and then seeing them from their kind of inception through to being put on. Has that been constant then? Have you been away from the theatre because of work, or have you always got to see the shows that you wanted to see?
I have a bit of a confession to make, really. I'm not actually a huge fan of theatre generally. I didn't study drama or theatre at school or college. I'm not a big fan of the classics. I suppose I'm a bit of a heathen. We're a new writing company, and I think that is very exciting. Working with a writer and working with and alongside them to pull out the story, which has never been heard before. And I kind of blanch a little bit when Shakespeare gets done time and time again, and I kind of see a whole raft of writers struggling to get airtime on stages and get commissioned. I mean, a lot of people love Shakespeare, so it's really mealy-mouthed of me to say that, but I kind of think 400 years old, surely you should give someone else a go. From that point of view, I do like new writing, which is why Red Ladder is great. There are a few theatre companies that I would go and travel to see, but not many. We're very fortunate. We've got a good relationship with the Playhouse next door. Our office is just over the way from the Playhouse, so we get to see quite a lot of work that's put on there. Some of which is brilliant, some of which is just not my cup of tea. It doesn't mean it's not well made. It's just doesn't really excite me. So, I did get offered a job a few years ago, and this, and I hadn't realised at the time, but it became a bit of an acid test. Was would my kids thank me if I made them come and see the work from that theatre company? And the answer, so I turned the job down, was no, I don't think they would. It wouldn't excite them. So my kids are quite a good litmus test for the work we make, I think, because it's new, it's quite vital. It's issue-based, makes it sound a bit worthy, and it's not really issue-based, but there will always be politics with a small p in there. There'll always be, the word struggle will be in there somehow. The words of, giving voice to those who maybe don't always get heard is in there. A lot of that messaging I really, kind of stand behind in terms of the work we produce. So, and it's entertaining. We had a board away day a good few years ago. We probably spoke for an hour about this word entertainment, and there was a faction that was very pro the word, and there was a few dissenting voices. And I just think, I don't know, when people are coming to see your work, they want to be entertained. It doesn't have to be all high kicks and jazz hands, but they've got to have enjoyed the experience. It might be harrowing at times, but I don't think entertainment's a bad word. And I kind of think that people go to the theatre for escapism a bit, even if it's about other people's lives. It's maybe educational, but not. It can be told in an entertaining way. So and we make work that people enjoy and come back and see time and again, and that's important.
So do the works? I mean, do most of these go on? What's their life after they've been with you?
We've got a warehouse. We've got quite a few. Generally, the rhythm is work with a writer, rehearse, tour. Not always tour, because some work we put in certain sites or site specific. In the old days, it would get put in the skip. These days, it gets put in the warehouse. On the off chance, we'll bring it back out again, which is rare. I suppose some of the work feels like it can be of the moment a bit, even if it takes 18 months to write or stage. We've had a couple of shows that have come out a couple of times. Damned United we produced, that's come out every year for 6 years now. So that is one that does have, an afterlife, if you like. There are some shows that, I don't know, just feel right for the moment, and then, I don't know, just doesn't seem quite right to bring them out again. The trouble we have at the moment, I guess we'll come on to this in due course, is because of the pandemic, quite a lot of our work is small scale. So it would go into studio spaces in theatres, or sometimes on their medium-sized stages, rarely on their big stages. And because of the pandemic, a lot of the studio spaces are so small that with social distancing, it's just not economic to open. So I think the worry now at the moment is that all of the small scale product is concertinaed up over 18 months. So it's not just venues making their own work, it's touring theatre companies like us. So we're fighting, there's a lot of product to go into not many spaces, and quite a few theatres still haven't opened up their studios because they can be a bit claustrophobic, I suppose. And studios tend to be, although I'm sure architects wouldn't say this, but tend to be a bit of an afterthought. They tend to be, oh, what space have we got left? Oh, great, we've got a studio theatre in there. So they can be either subterranean or claustrophobic, or just not very accessible, or very high up or very low down. So I think if you're worried about being in an enclosed environment, they're not brilliant spaces by and large. So one of the reasons we don't tour work again is that there's a lot of demand, a lot of supply and not as much demand. So, and we like to create at least one new piece a year, and that's probably what we tour. We have recently filmed 3 shows, old shows, so we've got them back out of their boxes. So that'll be coming on stream via the Playhouse, hopefully towards the end of October, early November. So they will get an afterlife, but in obviously in a digital format rather than live.
I was going to take us into how you went through the pandemic and what happened and how you got there, but I was also going to ask about any sort of interactive theatre or any sort of like online theatre. So I mean, you kind of mentioned it there, but so take us through lockdown and through what's happened through the pandemic. I mean, I would imagine that you would have had shows either in production or in development, and everything's all of a sudden closed down, and you will have lost people, you would have tried to keep people. What happened?
Yes, so in terms of company structure, we've got 2 full-time employees. That's me, producer, and our artistic director, Rod. We also have a 0.5 marketing manager, Sasha. The rest of our staff is freelance. So we were in the fortunate position, mainly due to furlough, being able to, although this didn't directly pay for freelance staff, we managed to keep our freelance admin staff on their contracted hours completely through the pandemic, which was great for us to have some kind of continuity, but also obviously help them. When the pandemic struck, we were halfway through a tour of a production called Smile Club. We'd opened that at the Playhouse in early March, and then I think the final performance was on the 14th, and then on the Monday the 16th is when there was this rather woolly advice from Boris that it wasn't illegal for theatres to open, but the advice was don't go to them. So it was just so frustrating, because obviously in terms of contracts, in terms of insurance, all of those elements, no one really knew, so it wasn't
where you stood.
absolutely, yeah. So we had to abandon that tour. The idea was to postpone it because obviously right at the beginning of the pandemic, the thought was weeks, possibly months, but not 80. We paid the actor and stage manager in full for that contract, which was had another month to run. And then we just spent time rescheduling shows after shows and rescheduling. And then it got to July, and the intelligence at that point was that this was by the autumn we would be, we'd have broken the back of it and we'd be back running, maybe not on full kilter, but on economically enough kilter to warrant staging shows again. And we had this idea, well, it was written, a piece called My Voice Was Heard, but it was ignored. And it was very much about Black experience in England from a teacher's perspective and a pupil's perspective. Very powerful piece. And it wasn't as a direct result of what happened with George Floyd, but it was our response, if you like. We purposely didn't put out any particular messaging. I think that was an internal wrestle as to the correct wording from a white-led organisation about supporting, both George Floyd but also Black Lives Matter movement. So we thought that the ideal response was to make some work, exploring and exposing some of the issues within England, Britain. So that we fast forwarded that project, and that was due to tour in December last year. So we had the tour booked. We were opening at the Playhouse. We did all the rehearsals with kind of COVID measures in place, like masks and distancing and signing in and temperature checks and COVID checks and all that kind of thing. We did the technical rehearsals, the dress rehearsal, and then I think on the Friday of that week when we were due to open, the lockdown was reinstalled. Leeds was still in Tier 3, but they changed the premise of what you could do within Tier 3. Previously, you'd been allowed to open theatres. New regime, theatres were closed, so they distributed quite a lot of cash through something that was called the Creative Recovery Fund for arts organisations and cultural organisations, which meant that helped enormously. And then everyone thought, well, Christmas would be fine. So people spent millions on Christmas productions. Lo and behold, no, close all that. So all the money that was given with one hand was kind of taken away instantly by that decision. I'm not saying it's the wrong or the right decision, but it was a change. It came really late on, so that all the financial commitment being made for Christmas shows. We were lucky; we had a relatively small cast and crew, so we had sufficient surplus reserves to be able to pay people in full for what would have been that tour. So again, really disappointed. We did get. We were fortunate that we managed to work through to dress rehearsal stage. So we knew that the show worked. We knew that the design worked. We had all the lighting cues programmed in. So the show was made in effect. So all we now need to do, which we will do in a month's time, is dust it down, put it back together and re-rehearse for a week. And then we'll tour it again, opening at the Playhouse virtually a year to the day than it would have happened. So we lost a number of performances. We didn't lose any staff, which was good. The Smile Club tour was shelved. During that time, in February, the following February, we decided to apply for some additional funding to make 3 films, one of which was Smile Club. So when we've made that, hopefully audiences that would have seen it on the tour can now see it in its digital form. One was A Damned United, because we feel that it's got a universal following, and beyond these shores, I think there's lots of Leeds fans everywhere, and Derby fans and not Tories fans who would be very interested in seeing the stage show. Film was very popular, the book was very popular. And then the third film, the third play we filmed was a show called Glory, which was written by Leeds and Bradford journalist Nick Ahad. I don't know if you know Nick at all. He's BBC radio shows, does Front Room. He wrote the show about wrestling, which is not our normal format for a show, but we toured a wrestling ring. And it became, it's a brilliant piece of writing. It was a kind of microcosm for racism, and it wasn't really about Brexit, but there was definitely an undercurrent of, within some of the characters, suspicion of incomers into Britain And you saw very polarized views from three lads who had wrestling as their common bond, but they had huge issues with other races for, for very real reasons. They tarred a whole faith or race with the blame for a certain incidents they'd suffered personally, which, as the play wears on, they realise that is, they can't tar everyone.
It's unreasonable, yeah.
But their pain was very real, and they had suffered. So it's a brilliant piece of writing. It got you thinking. The main protagonist, or the guy in the middle, the hub, if you like, was a character called Jim Glory, and he was a real throwback to wrestling in the 70s and 80s. He was kind of, he's a fictional character, but his heyday was in the days of, I don't know if any of these names are like Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy, and this kind of cartoony wrestling. He was an interesting character because you liked him, but he was incredibly inappropriate. He was incredibly stuck in a time warp. His language was from, the 70s and 80s, but he meant well. He was, I don't know, you just liked him, and you would cringe a bit some of the things he said, but he had a heart of gold. So it's a brilliant piece of writing. So we filmed that, and the action sequences, the fighting is incredible. I have to say, the lads, they're all trained in stage combat, drama school. But we had a fight director called Kev McCurdy who came up, and his real passion is wrestling, so it worked really well for him. But he does stunts for Bond films. So, he does a lot of quite big feature films. But because he really likes wrestling, he kind of took this small project on, and within 2 days, he had these lads doing amazing wrestling moves, and they are, when you watch it, you do wince, and you kind of think, I'm so well trained, and the other thing is, because it's in the round, you can't really pull that much, because obviously if it's end on, you can hide those, what have you, but because it's in the round, they are real throws, and they're not real punches, but they are, incredibly well timed, and we've just edited that film last week, and it's come out really well, and I'm looking forward to seeing that again. And it's just another. We also did a podcast at the beginning of the first lockdown called Connected, which was about two lads who meet every Wednesday in the pub, chat shit to each other, price of eggs, one supported Leeds, one supported Liverpool. As the season was progressing, was Leeds were going to get promoted for the first time in 16 years, or were they? Liverpool were going to win the league for the first time in 30 years, or were they? Was the pandemic going to scupper this? And as the podcast wore on, the pandemic wore on, and it was kind of a parallel commentary on. So they weren't able to then meet in the pub, so they'd have a beer on Zoom, and then as it got more and more serious, one of them's parents contracted it and was, I can't remember if they survived or not, but it was just a mirror of what two normal lads, from being quite dismissive of this, this virus to start with, and the closer it got to home, the realization that it was, and one of the lads who did the podcast was Stevie Ward, who used to play for Leeds Rhinos. I don't know if you know anything about Leeds rugby, but he was captain of Leeds Rhinos at the time. So
nice.
That was his kind of acting break, or acting debut, if you like, albeit on audio. But so we've done a bit of digital project. Some of that is to future-proof it, if we can't play live again. Some of it is about having really powerful shows. Some of it, hopefully we'll be able to recoup a bit of cash from selling them. But, I'm not sure how. We're not being unrealistic that we're going to be able to retire on the proceeds of those. I'm not sure digital theatre is, that lucrative, but it also gave quite a lot of work to quite a lot of actors and creatives as well.
I mean, I'm thinking of non-traditional methods and stuff. I mean, your productions play in all sorts of venues, non-traditional venues. Like, I assume you go into schools as well as like other buildings. And
we rarely go into schools. The company kind of reflects the artistic director. We're a small company, so it is a bit like being, as I said earlier, a bit like being a landlord in a way, where it revolves around the ethos and the passion and the lived experience of the artistic director. Prior to Rod taking over, we did do quite a lot of work in youth clubs and schools. That work, it became harder and harder to get work into schools. It used to be, 15, 20 years ago, county councils would buy a show for maybe 2 weeks and put it into youth clubs and schools themselves. So we didn't have to book that tour. I don't know, Leicestershire County Council would say, we really like the idea of this play, we'll buy 2 weeks off you, what will it cost? And then they would tell you where to go each day. That stopped, as government involvement in local authorities reduced towards the arts, and that became a much harder ask. We've always found schools a little bit impenetrable as to get work in there. I think there are certain companies who work predominantly in schools, so they've got that relationship, if you like. We've done a few sessions in the school in Leeds about, I never get the wording right, is it PSHE or PHSE? Kind of pastoral element of teaching, if you like, rather than English or drama or geography. So we've done a few sessions which are quite powerful, but we don't do that much work in schools, but we do work in men's clubs, sports clubs, community centres. We try wherever possible to reproduce the production values that you would see on stage in a non-traditional venue. So we bring all the lights, all the sound, as much set as we can put in. We tend to get the sets designed in a modular way so that if there's a low ceiling, we can just not put that bit on the set, or if it's a narrow space, we can lose bits here and there. So the designer's job is kind of twofold, really, along with the lighting design, is that design for a theatre. So we'll open this show in a month's time at Leeds Playhouse, so there'll be a lighting design on the set for that. But we'll probably have to lose some bits in smaller venues or in working men's clubs, for instance, or if we've got cart the thing upstairs, then we might not be bringing it all up, So, but wherever possible, it's the same cast, it's obviously the same writing. We try and recreate the experience so that the idea being that we're trying to reduce risk for a customer, and that risk could be just not liking going to the theatre, not knowing the etiquette, if you like, of going to the theatre, not wanting to come in the city centre and leaving at 10:30 at night. Money, that's a big thing. It's not necessarily cheap to go to the theatre. We played a gig on Sunday night in a community centre just outside Wakefield. It was a £5 ticket. Everyone knew everyone in the venue. We had 70 people there, which was great. Whether would we have got that in the theatre? Maybe not, but people walked there. So, there's a little bit of saving the planet in terms of that. Show's finished by 8:30, so everyone could get home in good time. So there is a number of positive spin-offs to doing that, taking work into those kind of environments. The major one is that probably 50 or 60% of people wouldn't go to the theatre anyway. So it's exposing some high quality theatre to audiences that might not either think it would be for them or just wouldn't enjoy the environment of going to quite a formal, rigid structure that a theatre can be. So we also have a show running at the moment in Liverpool, at the Royal Court in Liverpool, which is the size of the Grand Theatre in Leeds. So we'll take a show to a community centre and then play to 1,100 people in Liverpool. So I quite like that about us. We're a bit comedian-esque in that we'll reflect our environments. If we need to play big, we can. If it needs to play on a micro level, it can do without compromising quality. That's the aim.
I'm thinking in terms of your revenue generation, how often do you need to put on a big show that maybe will make a big profit? Or how do you get to a point of, do you have shows where you've got a financial model of, say, a one-man or one-woman show that sets up in theatres and you're like, we need 30 people each night for this and we need to run it for X many nights? Is it just you do what you feel as you feel and you try to make the best of each one? Or is it like, how much of a plan is there to it?
I'd probably say it's a little bit of all of that, to be honest with you. In terms of budgeting, the big show in Liverpool is a cast of 8, band of 3. We've got a co-producer, which is the Royal Court in Liverpool. They are taking the majority of the financial risk for that. We are core funded by the Arts Council, so we can tour at a loss. So our guarantee for the show in Liverpool is what we would normally incur as a deficit on a show. And we're funded for 4 years currently, and we're coming up to we're now in the last year of that 4 years, but because of the pandemic, there's been an extension year added. We're not guaranteed to get that extension year. We've applied for it. We should find out in a couple of months. But that does allow huge amounts of surety in trying to even out the peaks and troughs of, the vagaries of trying to draw audiences in. It also allows us to be more risk-taking in product, so it doesn't have to be Shakespeare or a classic. It can be new writing, which is notoriously difficult to draw audiences. There isn't that much of robbing Peter to pay Paul. But the Damned United, when we did it at the Playhouse originally, we'd lost our core funding, and we were given the rights to the play by the author David Peace, who wrote the original book, and that went quite a long way to not necessarily saving the company, but giving us a financial hump to go on for at least another couple of years. And we were then fortunate enough to reapply to get into the core funded gang, if you like, of the Arts Council. So that production, along with a few other bits of fundraising, got us through that 3-year hiatus, if you like. But by and large, the scale of the show, you just lose less when there's less people in it. That's basically it. The non-traditional touring, we did get a grant to do that. That grant is now finished. We are trying to continue it as best we can. But that, as you can probably, even a one-man show at a £5 a ticket with 30 or 40 people doesn't really scratch the surface. So,
no.
Without subsidy, the majority of regional theatre wouldn't exist. You'd have shows at the Grand Theatre, which is #1 touring commercial work, but the Playhouse wouldn't exist. Carriage Works wouldn't exist. City Varieties would struggle. So unlike America, where it's all philanthropic giving that keeps theatre going, in this country is central government that supports this. So the equation is obviously try and maximise income, obviously try and keep expenditure within the bounds of the budget, which is we usually do, I have to say. The variable is the income, but on the non-traditional touring stuff, the income is relatively low. So whether it's 30 people or 40 people, it's much a better evening if there's 40 people. Financially, it doesn't make huge amounts of difference. But I think some of the most profound shows we've done have been in non-traditional spaces. Some of the reactions. We quite often do a post-show Q&A, post-show chat with either the cast or the writer, whoever's around. And some of that reaction is really heartwarming, and you realise the power of some of the work when people can respond to it on a personal basis. So the subsidy probably allows us a deficit of about 30,000 a show. So each show will cost around about 60,000, I would say, of which we'll get 30,000 back in box office or fees or other income generation, and 30,000. If we get more than that, then that's great. We have less of a deficit on that show, so it might add a little bit to reserves, which we can use the following year for maybe an extra cast member or an extra longer run of something, or taking work into a non-traditional space. So if we can save some money, we will, but it will always go back on the stage. We have some reserves, and we have reserve levels that we try and maintain for rainy day, but it's relatively small.
What I wanted to ask you, as you were speaking about that, I'm thinking, so what do you actually think in terms of theatre going? Like, are we a theatre going nation or not a theatre going nation? Are we people that, think we're not theatre going, but then we watch theatre and we enjoy it? Or like, what do you make of all of this?
I think what is quite interesting at the moment, and the surveys that I've seen and the hearsay from venues, is that audiences are slow to return. And I think because in this country, by and large, it is the reserve of the middle class, by and large, and this is a generalisation of the older generation. And obviously the nature of this pandemic, the older age group are more at risk. And theatre has a job to do to replace that audience, or augment it, if you like, rather than replace it. I think by taking work into non-traditional spaces, that equation goes out the window. So I think we attract people who wouldn't normally go, but will for a £5 will risk it. It's a couple of pints, and I think we've definitely made some converts along the way. Whether we've made converts that then would go to the theatre, I'm not sure, but we've certainly had converts who come back and see us in their space again, and not have. And look forward to it rather than have trepidation that this is going to be either too wordy, too highbrow, just irrelevant, not entertaining. I think we've broken down quite a lot of those myths. I think generally, I think it's a small percentage of the public that would consider themselves to be theatre going. We did a we took a family show into a working men's club the other week, and it wasn't a huge audience, but it was middle of the afternoon on Friday, maybe 2 o'clock on a Friday. So predominantly the audience was kids. Obviously, it was in the summer holidays, and mums. And the mums basically put the kids in the middle and sat on the side and talked all the way through it. And it was very much a sense that they put the kids in front of the telly. And it was fascinating. I mean, the actors had to really work hard, harder than they would have done normally, because that's what they wanted to do. You know, the audience kind of dictates, should be able to take a bit of the etiquette rather than, I mean, if I'd have gone over and asked them to stop talking, that conversation could have gone on some time. That conversation could be far more disruptive to everyone than just letting this. I mean, it's constant. But it was very much as if it was the telly, you know. So the kids loved it, and you know, you kind of think, and we do work with actors who, you know, it can be a tough gig sometimes because they are working in front of a non-theatre audience as well as in a non-traditional theatre environment. I would be amazed if 10% of the population thought themselves as theatre going, and that 10% would probably include opera and ballet and what we would call the high arts. It's interesting if you go to Eastern Europe, for instance, things like opera and ballet and classical music are not deemed anywhere near as intellectually challenging as they appear to be in this country. They're far more, you know, part and parcel of everyday life. You know, I think they're far more integrated into, you know, school and therefore, you know, the nation's psyche. And it's affordable by and large, whereas I'm not sure theatre is really affordable for many people in this country. If they're not sure it's something they want to do, you know, if being told where to sit and not eat crisps and not play on your phone, that doesn't work for you, then the theatre's, it's not the right environment, you know, and the people who do go to that environment would find it frustrating. If you were, when we took the Damned United to the Playhouse the first time, the play was just about an hour and 10 minutes, I think, and there's a bit in the play where Brian Clough, I don't know if you know the Damned United story at all, but it's basically the story of Brian Clough and his 44 days, infamous days at Leeds. And after about 45 minutes in the play, Brian Clough takes a phone call from his brother to tell him that his mum's died. And it was as if half time had come, because loads of blokes would get up and leave the theatre to go to the toilet and then come back with more beer. And it was as if it was, oh, this is like an emotional bit. It's not for me. I'm not, you know, I'm not interested in Brian Clough's being sad because his mum's died. I'm off for a pint. And the staff were kind of a little bit, the front of house staff were really quite anxious about this, because this is in the courtyard section of Leeds Playhouse, and done it up now, but the gangways used to rattle and make so much noise, went up and down because you could retract them, but it's quite old by then. So that it just made me smile that this was part and parcel of putting this play on at the Playhouse, was to bring in a new audience, to bring in, you know, a non-theatre audience, but the non-theatre audience had different ways of relating to it, you know, and it was a bit of a clash of culture to start with. It's almost as if the halftime whistle had blown, you know, 15 blokes to stand up and push past people to get to the toilet and then come back with more beer, spilling it on the way. So yeah, that made me smile. I think the job of the Playhouse was to try and programme work that audience might like to come back and see, which isn't always easy. So yeah, we like to think that anyone would come and enjoy or get on with one of our plays. We might be misguided in that, but I think we're less misguided with that than a lot of theatre companies and a lot of theatres.
How close would you say your stuff is to, you know, like if you're trying to communicate to a mass audience or a working class audience, or like, you know, hard to reach people, how much of it is leaning towards music hall or has any relation towards music hall?
Well, we did a show 9 years ago now called Big Society, and the title came from David Cameron, who was Prime Minister at the time, trying to invigorate the great British population to be more communal and basically save his government loads of money by doing stuff that he should pay for doing it for free. There was this kind of neighbourhood watch, curtain twitching outlook to it. Boff Worley wrote it. Boff was one of the founder members of Chumbawamba, and it's turned into a very clever and successful playwright. So we did this musical show called Big Society, and it had Phil Jupiters in, who was never mind the Buzzcocks. He was the music hall venue owner. He was a baddie. He wanted to close it down because the banks were stalling. And we just got an amazing audience for that. It was at the City Varieties. Not long, it was the first show in after their pantomime, after their refurb. And so it was set backstage in the City Varieties. So well, we had a number of weird turns in it. There was the Bird Woman of Berlin. There was the Wardrobe of Mystery, which was one of those wardrobes with a false back that people disappeared through. What else did we have? We had Marcel, the Invisible Monkey. It was just brilliant. It was just so much fun. I mean, there was some politics in there because it was, you know, the actors were worried about losing their jobs. And I think then, there was, what was it? Oh, there was the Man from the Double Standard, which was a local newspaper, obviously. Complete shark, or reptiles, I think they used to be known. And it was poking fun at lots of different things. And that went down really well. We had some traditional theatre goers, we had the band Chumbawamba were in it as well, which helped. So we drew quite a music audience as well, which went down well at the City Varieties. They do a lot of music there. Tends to be quite expensive though, touring music. You've got PA, you've got instruments, you probably need a band. So our bigger shows have become a bit more musical over time. The smaller shows tend not to be musical or have music in, but I think what they will have that people can latch onto is a message that's relatable, I suppose. It's a human message. So it wouldn't be sci-fi, it wouldn't be Russian, it would be something that most people could get a handle on, and it would probably be it would be about relationships with friends, it would be relationships with not boy and girl, it's not, we don't really tend to do that stuff, but it would be relationships, it would be a family, for instance, or it would be you would recognize situations and you could either be in it, you know, oh, that reminds me of so and so, or, you know, I don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah.
So I think that's very relatable, but it wouldn't be Downton Abbey, you know, it wouldn't be, you know, something that you would ogle at rather than be a part of. So I think it's real, I suppose. The Damned United, being football based, you know, and people certainly in Leeds would know the story, who would connect to Leeds United would know that story very well. One thing we hadn't really figured out when we opened the place, we then went to Derby Theatre, and Brian Clough's absolutely loved by Derby because he did miracles with them. But the actor playing Brian Clough was used to getting booed and heckled in Leeds, and you know, people would turn up in their Leeds shirts at Leeds Playhouse. It was great, and boo at this and just shout at him, which was like hilarious. It was, but then there was this kind of televisual relationship, you know, where actors that are in soaps, for instance, get harangued in the street. If they, you know, they've done something naughty on Emmerdale, you know, they'll get lambasted by, you know, someone with a brolly in the centre of Leeds. There is that embodiment of the reality, which is. And then we went to Derby, and I don't know why we didn't twig this, but the actor just was really taken aback when he walked on stage and was cheered. You know, he'd had 5 weeks of getting a dog's abuse from an audience. And then the next night, it felt like he was a hero. I got he revelled in it for that 2 weeks. I know, but yeah, it was a kind of from that point of view, it was a little bit musical. It was a bit, you know, his the baddie. The play we've got in Liverpool at the moment, there's a man from the council who just gets booed every time he comes on. He is the pantomime villain, and he's not. I suppose he is set up a bit like that. But yeah, I think that you side with people in the plays. I think, you know, you know, you can see where people have come from. You can see where, you know, there's hope where people want to go to. So I think that rather than the musical, I think it's that relationship with the story that people can latch onto.
I mean, obviously, you know, musical is a mass popular medium and mass sort of entertainment for working class people and so on, and but a lot of that history goes into TV and TV shows and so on, and then it's kind of as if theatre's not allowed to have access to that heritage sometimes. I mean, I wanted to ask you about being a radical theatre company as well, and also just that, what do you think of this? That, like, I kind of have the impression that theatre is one of the few areas where you really can be free. I mean, we're supposed to have all this digital freedom, but there's a lot of like cooling effect of doing something online. Like, whereas theatre still, you know, I mean, it's quite protected. It doesn't seem to be something that people want to censor or try to censor? You know, they have at points in history, but now it's kind of like, oh, well, you know, it's only theatres, you know. It seems like it has the potential to be a lot more dangerous and take a lot more risks than a lot of other mediums. I mean, what do you think about any of that?
Yeah, I mean, prior to stand-up used to be that vehicle, and now, you know, so you go back to like Rick Mayall and Ben Elton and Alexis Sale were pretty radical, you know, with that wave of comedy came out. And then back in the old days of, you know, people like Les Dawson, and then, you know, the other side of the coin being Bernard Manning. I think you're right. I think theatre has got the ability, or has got the freedom of speech, if you like, to, you know, as a vehicle for different views. As an industry, it does self-police quite a lot. What it doesn't tend to produce is both sides of a story. So there might be, it tends to be predominantly left of centre, tends to be left of centre politically, a lot of theatre with messaging. It tends to be anti-establishment quite often, whatever that establishment is, even though that establishment pays for quite a lot of it. It always makes me smile. So I think you're right. I think there is an element of freedom, but I think what you don't always get is a balanced viewpoint from theatre. But that's not to say you should have a balanced viewpoint. But you tend to get very little, if you like, opposing viewpoints on certain issues, like, you know, you don't get much right-wing theatre, for instance, you know, and whether that would hold any traction or not, I don't know. So, but I think bigger theatres have to be careful about their paymasters. I think there is an inbuilt censorship about how far. I mean, that's the beauty of having a studio space. I think you're allowed to be more radical in a smaller space. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's more of a niche audience, possibly. That might attract what, you know, when I was talking earlier about, you know, your archetypal theatre audience. I think a more radical theatre production would draw in a more radical audience, necessarily. Yeah, I think there is still within theatre lots of idealism, which is great. A lot of hope that theatre can somehow change the world, that can reinvigorate conversations about fairness and about people without a voice. Whether that really actually holds much traction or not, I don't know. If the right people pick up on the messages and react, I mean, I was in London way back when Maggie Thatcher got rid of the Great London Council, and, you know, I just, to this day, I don't really understand how in a democracy that managed to happen. And Ken Livingstone was the mayor of the London Council at the time, Great London Council, and no one really batted an eyelid apart from the cultural movement, mainly theatre and stand-up. That was it, and we have no industrial muscle as such. You know, we weren't going to, you know, stop the commerce of London town by, you know, going picketing and stuff. So I think there's a voice there, there's a movement there, but again, how much power it's got, you know, I think it's very limited. But I think it can galvanise. I mean, the Red Ladder was formed out of the 1968 march against the Vietnam War. The Red Ladder was the hustings where the actors would stand on the, you know, the rungs of the ladder and Hyde Park at Speaker's Corner and do theatre shows with a megaphone and things like that. So, you know, they're born out of very political freedom of speech days, if you like, and tried to maintain that. How successful? Don't know. We're still going, so there must be, you know, through very varying degrees of left and right regimes. So we managed to steer a course through that. I wouldn't say we were as overtly radical as we were when we first started. I think it's more political with a small p. I wouldn't say it's banner waving. I wouldn't say it's tub thumping. But I think it's more about supporting, you know, those without a voice more than party political support, if you like.
I'm trying to ask people about universal basic income now, because I want to promote it and I think we should all have it, and I don't really want to ask loads of people for loads of money all the time. So yeah, I'd rather just be getting an income and be able to do what I want. So if you had a UBI, would you still be doing the theatre work? Would you keep producing? Would you work less? Would you work the same amount? How do you think it would change your working?
I think we do work in an industry which, I mean, I think I said this right at the beginning. I would say 95% of people who work in the industry do it because they really enjoy working in the industry, and it's not for the money. I mean, obviously it depends on what that level is for a number of people. If there are, I mean, my kids are grown up now, so I've got less need to financially plan in that respect. But I think if I was paid for less hours, for instance, I think I'd probably still do the same amount of work. I just do, you know, I don't know. I am so lucky that I think, you know, there's only been 1 year of my working life that I've not wanted to get out of bed, which it's amazing, really, and that is such a privilege that I've had to work in an environment that is very supportive, is very thrilling, is very challenging, but not in a competitive way. You know, it's a very positive challenge, if you like. I probably would just do the same. I probably would do. I can't think of. I could do some jigsaws, I suppose. Crosswords.
Do a bit more reading. Get your watch list ticked off.
Yeah, I could do a bit of that. I would still. I mean, it would be voluntary. You know, I would. I'm not. I don't. I think it'd be rubbish if I retired. I used to think my dad would be rubbish when he retired, and he was really busy, so maybe I'd be okay. You know, going back to the very first conversation, you know, I'm so fortunate to enjoy my work that I would do it for free. But if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't, because that to me would be I would be being exploited. I never feel exploited, even though you know, I suppose I could work in a different industry and get, you know, more money. I suppose because everyone's exploited, it's kind of okay. I don't feel any more or less exploited than, you know, the person next to me in the industry, you know. So there is a kind of camaraderie about that. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but yeah, I would absolutely carry on doing what I do for nothing if there was a way to live, you know.
I mean, I think that's the most difficult question to answer, because it's hard to imagine of just like, oh, you mean I don't have to do anything? Oh, all right then. Well, how do I actually feel about that? You know, like sometimes you can have the reaction, you have to do stuff. You're like, no, I'm not going to do stuff. I don't want to do stuff. But, you know, you don't have to do stuff. It's like, well, maybe I do want to do stuff then.
Yeah. Well, the furlough experiment, you know, for want of a better expression, the furlough, which is now finished, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I thought, I'm not a huge fan of government at all, and I'm not a huge fan of, you know, quite a lot of what they've done during this, but I thought the furlough scheme has been unbelievably good. From, you know, an ethical point of view, I think they brought it in really quickly, and I thought they brought it in a very fair way. Of course, it could be fair, but they had to do it pretty quick. From a business point of view, I never understood why on March the 17th, Boris didn't put a penny on income tax. I'd have done that straight away. So anyone still in work, no, I don't know anyone who would have had any qualms about that, and just said, like, we are future-proof in Britain. This could last for a week or it could last for a year. No one knows. Go with us on this. Stick a penny on income tax, rather than the pain will come, and it will come. You know, like talking about taking £20 off universal. It's just there was something that Uli Hoeneß said, who's the chief executive of Bayern Munich. And I do, a lot of my life revolves around football, but he said about season ticket holders at Bayern Munich, I think the ground holds 65,000 or something. He said we could charge another €200 per season ticket and we could get it. We've got a waiting list, you know, halfway around Munich. We could absolutely do that. He said that would get me £2 million a year. He said, what does that get Bayern Munich? He said it gets absolutely nothing in this day and age. He said, but €200 for your average Municher or German is a load of money. And actually, you know, so that kind of ethos of, so taking £20 off people who've barely got £21, how many £20 are they going to get? Not that much relative. Do you know what I mean? If they'd have just done tax, or that just seems such an easy target to me, and a really bad, you know, if you've been mercenary, it's not a vote winner. I don't know many people who would agree with that. So it just feels to me that there are better ways of circulating cash than than taxing the poor. It just feels just morally and ethically bankrupt. And I'm not even sure it makes particularly business sense either. And I think that's the thing that irks me about, quite a lot of the rhetoric around taxation is that, taking a couple more percent off people who are earning $250,000, they won't even notice it. You hear about footballers and people who are stashing cash away through tax avoidance schemes. You kind of think, how much money does anyone actually need? What after a certain amount of money, surely it becomes irrelevant. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Maybe I've got one weird about money, but Mr. McCall.
Well, it's being able to pay for what you need to be able to pay for, isn't it? That's the thing. That's what you always need to sort of keep in mind. But
the word need to want is very different, isn't it? So that and people's definition of need is subjective. But I mean, yeah. I just kind of think support, things like the NHS, things like the welfare state is just unbelievably good, and we should be so proud of it, not tear it to pieces. Could be run better. I still fail to see why the trains are better when there's 10 different companies running them than one. I just don't understand how that can be a thing, but it is. But why don't we just get someone really brilliant to run the railways for the country, for instance? They must be out there. But
yeah.
So my relationship with, I'm fortunate that I have a job. I'm fortunate that I'm, as far as I'm aware, I'm not going to be put out to grass anytime soon. But I would do it. Don't tell my board this, but I would do it.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between would do it for money and can do it for, would do it for no money and can do it for no money. The thing is, you would do, but you can't.
Yeah, basically, my kids that decision. I know.
Yeah, my bank manager wouldn't like that, apart from anything else, and plus I need to eat.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't go into a period of agreeing with you on everything that you've said there, which I could easily do, but then that's just going to derail where we're going with the rest of the conversation. Let's talk about Brexit then.
Yes.
How is Brexit going to affect you? Do you have any idea? Has it had any effect?
I mean, we as a business, we've taken a show to Belfast in 15 years, and that's the only time we've ever crossed water to take a show anywhere. So from a business perspective, so for kind of ease of transit, if you like, in terms of visas and currency and ease of that makes no difference to us. We don't tour internationally. We just tour within these islands. So we tend to, wherever possible, cast from within Yorkshire. There's a number of reasons. A, it gives local actors a job. B, it's way cheaper. We don't have to pay for travel and accommodation, things like that. Same with our creatives. So losing rafts of workforce hasn't really impacted on us. So from a purely professional point of view, Brexit has had little or no impact. I do know theatre companies who do tour, and it's becoming a real, coupled with the pandemic, the uncertainty around all of that means that their output is virtually nil at the moment, because they have to get a visa for every country they go to separately. Then transit through Europe is virtually impossible, or so arduous and so expensive, and so whimsical as to whether you get visas or you don't. I do smile when I'm old enough to remember when the Tories took us into Europe, and the backlash from the left was seismic, but it made no difference. We still went into Europe. Ted Heath and his merry gang were very, and what feels like political blink of an eye later, it's the Tories that take us out of Europe. And I don't know. It just felt like a really ridiculous kind of pissing up the wall contest by David Cameron. That he lost so badly, and the impact. And I have to say that on both sides of the campaign, there was very few truths, I think, coming out as to what the real impact was going to be. And sure, a lot of that was because we didn't know what the real impacts were going to be. But things like borders between Northern and the Republic of Ireland, bleedingly obvious, were going to be problematical. Import-export was going to be problematical, and all the things that being in Europe made easy were going to become difficult.
with the Brexit thing, has it generated any work? Have you got any pieces that have come out of it? Like, has it, has it produced anything artistic?
Well, I suppose our show about wrestling was probably some of the narrative that was probably heightened by Brexit, heightened by the polarization that vote brought about in terms of people's perception of immigrants and asylum seekers and refugees.
And what they were allowed to say about any of that as well.
Yeah, and also what the kind of missed knowledge about what a refugee is and what an asylum seeker is and what they can and what they can't do and what their privileges in inverted commas are in this country, So it was a bit of an expose of that, but I think Brexit just highlighted that rather than, and it wasn't the driving force behind the creation of the piece, if you like. But I think some of the issues in it were certainly expanded by that vote, and it felt a more immediate piece because of the vote, I guess. But it's we could release it now, we could release it 10 years ago. Some of those same tropes are the same. Can we move away from Brexit? Is that okay?
Yeah. Right, so I was gonna, I will try and bring it back to something happier, but I've got one last sort of heavy question.
Okay.
So, which is climate, and sustainability, and obviously, like with theatre's like an industry that high level of consumables, like you said yourself, you used to kind of skip most of the flats, storing them. What can you do, or what have you been thinking about, or do you have any opportunity at all, or any ability or resources to think about any of that? Like, how much greening can you do, and is it something that you can spend time on, thinking of new ideas in that direction?
Well, it's very, very much to the fore of the industry's thinking. It's very much to the fore of the Arts Council's thinking. I think a lot of what's happened in the industry recently has had a positive impact, but it's come about because it's saved money. So things like most theatre lighting now is LED, so it draws far less power. It's far more flexible as a you get 256,000 colours or whatever, as opposed to a bit of gel in front of a white light. It's in terms of design, in terms of it's so much more flexible and user friendly, but also it's one light can do the job of 10, and one light takes a fraction of the power. So that has come about.
And weight as well, I guess. Like for transporting it'll be super light, and yeah,
and they last forever. It's you're not replacing them. Theatre lamps are 20 quid or whatever. So one of those gets knocked, or that's money down the drain. So that has had a big impact on touring and also building based lighting. So I think things have come along that are economically sustainable. We are, the day after tomorrow, as a company, engaging with Sustainable Arts in Leeds. We're doing some carbon literacy training on Thursday. So there's a couple of staff members and some board members and a couple of other theatre companies looking at. So this morning before I came on, I've just spent 3 hours looking at the impact we are as humans having on the planet, and far worse than Brexit. But as an industry, we're not very green. As an industry, we're not very sustainable. So yes, we are thinking about it. Yes, we are doing this training on Thursday. I would love to be able to say here and now that it will have a huge impact on our footprint. It's just hard to visualize how we can take work. We can either ask loads of people to come to one place, i.e. a big theatre, or we can take work to lots of little places where people might be able to walk or get the bus to. Another problem with theatre in Leeds is if it finishes at 10:30, my last bus back to Ossett is 10 o'clock. So I can't get home. So do I drive or do I not go to the theatre? So I think there are things that the theatre could do. Surely Monday and Tuesday you could start at 6 o'clock, for instance, and maybe the week a bit later. I think there is some outmoded thinking that could be gone into. We have a really old battered van, and of course it has to go through its MOT, of course it has to have its emissions tested, so I guess it's kind of okay. But I look at it and I think, well, I look
That
at
should
it,
be on the road.
well, it shouldn't be on the road. But then I look at it and I think, well, it is still on the road. It's S-rage from first time around. It hasn't been skipped, so it hasn't been
Yeah.
thrown away, or
Yeah, in terms of its usability, it's been well used and
yeah. I mean,
been maximised.
Yeah, so you can look at it that way, and it's. But I'm not being defeatist about it, because I think that there's a lot of little gains definitely worth thinking about. So there is a thought in my head to gather half a dozen theatre companies in and around Leeds, and we put in and buy an electric vehicle that we can tour in. Trouble is, A, we all tend to tour at the same time, autumn and spring. B, reach on vans, for instance, electric vans isn't great at the moment. I mean, it will get better for sure, but we don't want to be stopping every 20 minutes to recharge or panic about, I don't know, doing a get out at 11 o'clock at night in Deptford or something in London, thinking, oh, I've got about 4 miles left. So I think it's what do they call it? Charge conflict or charge panic? The kind of stress that not being able to top your car.
Right. Yeah.
So that I do think about. I think as a company, I mean, doing this training. Do you know about Sale Arts in Leeds? I don't know.
Yeah. I've heard of it.
So I don't know what will come out of that. I've heard, it's quite profound. Certainly the reading and the source materials were eye-opening, and I don't think I've ever met a climate skeptic, but I do fail to see how anyone could be skeptical about the fact that we are wrecking the planet. But I'd be interested to sit down and chat with someone and hear why they think we aren't, and what body of evidence.
I think the main reason is the complete lack of action, at higher levels, just the total lack of appropriate response to the situation. And I think that's why, a lot of there's this problem with the world and this problem with the world, and why can't people be like this, and how can they get away with this? And it's like, we've got this huge existential crisis hanging over us, and everyone who thinks that they're anybody is doing absolutely nothing about it. And we're all supposed to be like, it's the house on fire thing. It's like, the house is literally on fire. Are we going to react to this? Or are we just going to keep having a party here? Or what's going on? I think that has a tremendous effect. I think it has a tremendous effect over everything.
Yeah. I mean, so I suppose, having watched a lot and read quite a lot this morning, which tops up kind of thoughts and beliefs that I had anyway, it's just such a huge problem that huge measures need to be taken. If we, as a small touring theatre company, can help to minimise that would be amazing. Whether we can, either by the way we work, help that, or by other methodologies, for instance, looking at our carbon footprint and trying to offset it somehow. The other element, that we are funded by the Arts Council to be a national touring theatre company.
Mm-hmm.
No one ever really defines what a tour is. 3 performances in different locations is deemed to be a tour. But actually, as a national, if we just did 3 gigs a year, questions might get asked in the house about how we really and our likelihood of continued funding would be reduced. So I think the Arts Council have got a difficult job in evaluating, the touring model, which is not really doing the planet any favours at all. Or if we tour hyper locally, I probably need to do some number crunching to say to the Arts Council, well, if we do 10 performances in these 10 venues where people walk and get the bus, it's actually way better than 1 performance in a venue with 1,000 people where everyone drives in, and the infrastructure needed to keep that building going. I don't know if I've got the brain power to do that, or whether that's a waste of my time. But
I think to some degree that is kind of a waste of your time, because that's a data crunching exercise. It's a big number crunching exercise. I mean, what do you think of the idea that from being green, from a sustainability perspective, a lot of that is about what you're kind of doing already. You know, you're trying to build community and reach out to people. You're trying to bring people into theatre, and you also have the opportunity to work with new writers who can work in an area of how we deal with this, how we live in this new world, this changed world. Like, you can produce climate-based content that, you know, deals with people, how they are dealing with it, and, you know, potentially how to deal with it in the future, that kind of thing. I mean, there's that. I mean, is that something that's kind of out of sight as being a sustainable side of things, or is that something that you could see as an avenue that's valuable in itself?
I mean, the play we've got in Liverpool is about a community who exist in the shadow of Liverpool football ground, and they have taken over, or they're seeking planning permission to take over a street of up for demolition houses. And at the apex of this terrace is a bakery, which was like, you know, it's been in Anfield for decades, and it's kind of a symbol of the community. And what are they doing with this terrace of houses is they've managed to get planning permission. They're going to turn it into affordable housing, but also completely neutral housing in terms of carbon emissions. So they're all solar panels, there'll be heat pumps and all this kind of thing. So there is there's a section in the play that talks about what this terrace is going to be and how it's going to be of the people and for the people, but also, you know, looking at further impacts on the climate. So that gets around the applause, which is great, you know. So I think within the work there is the opportunity to certainly sow some seeds of conversation and interest in the issues. We did do a play years ago called Ugly, which was an immense piece of work. It was very dark, and water was scarce, so you weren't allowed to cry, for instance. The state did not allow you to cry. You weren't allowed to ejaculate. That was a waste of fluid. There was so little water left on the planet that and so it was a very extreme play. It took it to the nth degree, but, you know, we're perhaps not that far away from it now. A hard watch, but actually a theatre-going audience weren't that keen on it. But a younger student type or teen to early 20 audience really thought it was profound. And in the end, there was the heroine was, I can't remember her name now, Mrs. Someone or other, who used to be a home economics teacher. There's two worlds. There was the state where the super specials lived, and then there was where everyone else lived, which was kind of like the Hades, really. But that's where all the fun was. But that's where all the people were put who were not going to be saved come the revolution, as it were. Yeah, it was a very clever piece of writing, but a very difficult. But not many theatres booked it. It wasn't a great tour. You know, there was a kind of going back to the conversation about theatre can be, you know, a vocal, a mouthpiece for issues. It wasn't really billed as a show about sustainability and climate change, but it definitely was. But yeah, a lot of theatres shied away from it. We can only really play either in venues we create ourselves, like recommends clubs, or when we get booked, you know. And if venues feel that a piece of work is too radical or going to be not who their audience would come and see, you know, we are at the behest of the gatekeepers, which is a shame a lot of the time in terms of spreading wider messaging. But it's certainly on our thought. We certainly have a couple of board members now who are very active. We've got quite a new tranche of board members very active in looking at ways to, you know, try and combat how we do things and why we do things. And there's been certain things that, I mean, I'm quite intrigued to know with the pandemic. Obviously, there's some really obvious benefits to people working from home. Some obvious benefits of me not coming to your office to do this, for instance. I'm also quite interested to know things like public transport. We've got a real kicking, and, you know, the amount. I mean, I don't think public transport in Leeds is brilliant. As I say, it's 10 o'clock my last bus home. There's no night buses. I don't think is there. I don't know. But public transport, you know, that's all been set back, you know, probably a decade in trying to get people onto public transport. That feels such a shame. You know, I took a test this morning, and you just look at the packaging that generates, that one test. But that is now seen as, you know, you have to do that. So,
well, it's not just the packaging either, it's the shipping, isn't it? Because, you know, most of them are still coming from China or whatever, aren't they? So it's like, you know, they're all piled on a big boat and shipped across the world.
So you know, on the one hand, you know, obviously the pandemic has taken a huge toll on life, huge toll on, you know, kind of mentality in terms of people being isolated and stuck at home. You know, people need human interaction, most people. And then there's kind of the spin-offs of, you know, the wastage but we have to do it or else we're not allowed to exist. Things like the testing, which is and you know, and all that embodies, and you know, posting packages backwards and forwards, and you know, all the so yes, of course, I think less traffic's good, but there has been some downsides to that as well. So yeah, I don't know what the overall impact will be. Probably beneficial, but it's not going to be as obvious, I think, as some people think.
I wanted to do like a variation on like if you could change 3 things at work, what would they be? But I want to kind of I want to try and finish on a more positive note. So I want to kind of look at something that you can get excited about in terms of your work.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you've been doing it for a while, you enjoy it, you've stayed in this field the whole time, you know, you've got a lot of experience in the field. Do you see yourself ever moving out of this, or is this you?
Can't see me doing anything else. I'm 60 in a couple of months' time, so the thought of a career change, if anyone would have me, what would I do? Cricket correspondent, maybe. Sports journalist, maybe. I don't know. I think it'll be me, to be honest. I think it will be me. And probably Red Ladder, I think, now.
So what would you want, like, so say you got to your retirement, you've done everything you wanted to do with Red Ladder, you're finishing off happy, it's all good, the world's still here, it's still working, it's still crazy, and you know, someone else is coming in, like, what would you want them to do? Would you want them to sort of take everything in a completely new direction, or would you want them to kind of, do you feel like it'd be a tradition that they'd need to carry on, like, is it a legacy of work? What would you sort of want from the next person?
I think the thing that exercises me a lot about us, because we're a very small company with quite a small output, is the stories that we tell with any conviction are stories that we can absolutely stand behind, which actually excludes quite a lot of stories, really, because my, you know, white, middle class, privileged, that's my life experience. I think maybe the model of full-time employees in the arts is maybe slightly flawed. So I think my role should probably be spiced up a bit. So while I'm doing my role, what I would really, really like is to have more full-time staff. I would really like, we have 5 or 6 freelancers who do a couple of days a week here for us, and then 3 days a week on either their own project or for someone else. Trying to get everyone together, even on Zoom calls, like herding cats, and that does my head in. I would like more control over that, but we're not a particularly rich company. There isn't enough work for all these guys to do full-time with us. So that would be, if I could improve something, that would be that I could say to everyone. I could pay. They wouldn't have to do more than 2 days work, but if I could pay them enough not to work for anyone else, so that I don't get my beck and call, but trying to get consensus is really difficult. So a bit more access to our freelancers would be amazing. So this next comment is a bit counterintuitive, because actually I think maybe my role and the artistic director's role, maybe they could be split up so that there is more lived experience within the company to do maybe a broader selection of work that has more resonance, if you like. So I think, yeah, I do weight things in a particular way. I'm quite obsessive about certain things. I mean, it's very much a kind of look after the pennies, the pounds to look after themselves. I think someone with a bit more flamboyance could do very different things with the company. We kept going when we weren't core funded, and a lot of that is to do with looking after the pennies. But you know, yeah, maybe breaking up the role a bit so that there's more voices, if you like, in that creative team, without that kind of, I suppose, you know, in business part, senior management team, so that there was maybe 4 people doing the 2 jobs, so that there was a bit more yin and yang, maybe, don't know. That might just dilute everything. It's hard to tell. It very much depends on the personalities, I guess. But that would be something that, if and when I leave, if that happened and it worked, I think that could be really good.
I think that's a really excellent answer.
Yeah.
Like, just the sort of, I mean, like you say, it's counterintuitive to kind of go, my job should probably not quite exist this way and be kind of broken up. I know we've been going for a while, but I want to keep you just a little bit longer to kind of, I want to cover your process with the writers. So how do you source the writers? Do people just have a play written and they write to you, or you do lots of workshops and you start working with people who've got ideas? Is every time different? What happens?
I really hate when people ask this question, because
sorry.
I feel massively guilty that I can't tell you what the process is. So not that long ago, it was probably 6 months, so myself and the artistic director Rod and a relatively newcomer to our team, Alice, spent a day, and I don't think I've been in the same room as those two for a year. So A, that was nice, but B, we went back to 2012. We looked at all the productions we've been involved in as a company. Big bit of paper on the wall, and what was the show? How did it come about? Who was it for? Who was in it? Who came to see it? It was just a kind of, let's have a look at all these shows for the last 10 years, 9 years, and try and see what the methodology was. And there was absolutely no rhyme or reason to it. It was actually probably one of the reasons that keeps this job so alive for me, is that quite often it would be either serendipitous or a gut feeling or someone we'd like to work with. So a script has landed on our desk and we've read it and we thought, fuck, that is amazing. That is right. That feels so right for us. That probably happens 1 in every 8 plays, I would say, that we produce. So we could say, send in the script, we'll read it, we might, chances are we won't. So I'm loath to say that to anyone. We've probably worked with a writer who we've wanted to work with, that the timelines have meshed, that the project has meshed, probably 1 in 10. So that's quite rare. It will be sometimes, so we've done a couple of adaptations of books. One was Damned United, one was a play called Promised Land, which was written by Leeds journalist, used to work for the Sunday Mirror, Anthony Clavone. And Anthony is just the best self-publicist I've ever met. Which he works for the media, so why wouldn't he be? But he's quite pushy, but actually he's right to be pushy, because this was a great project, and it was a story about the kind of looking at Jewish migration into Leeds in the pogroms in the early 19th century, and then this was a bit of a conceit by Anthony, but that the success of the football team mirrored the success, or the success of the city mirrored the success of the football team, and vice versa. And so there was, it was very interesting about, how a lot of Leeds business was founded on, Jewish immigration, like the whole tailoring industry within Leeds, and then moving out of the lowlands, and quite how Anthony managed to weave in Leeds United, I don't know, but and there was elements of, like, back in the 70s, it was a really horrible club to support, because it was dangerous going away from home, but actually it was really racist, it was a really racist club. So that was a kind of intertwined story. So that, I think I'd met Anthony at one of his book launches, and we started talking. The play we're going to do about black lived experience in England, Rod went to a reading at a theatre in Manchester and just thought it was brilliant. So again, we could do more of that. We could read more scripts. We could have more conversations, for sure. We worked with so Boff, who tends, we had a big, I told you about the away day, where this conversation about world entertainment, and the same away day, it became quite apparent that Red Ladder had 2 strands of work. There was the quite light-hearted, quite political, uplifting work, and then there was the dark, gloomy. Red Ladder, and we kind of would alternate gloomy and entertaining. So some writers are gloomy writers, and some writers are, like kind of unashamedly entertainment like writers. So, yeah, if we're looking to a particular subject, or we probably go to our gloomy folder, if you like. If there's something that we think is a bit more piss-takey, which would probably be political in a way, because Big Society was immensely political. It had a whole sketch where Phil Jupiters had one of the other actors with his hand up his back, and his bottom half was a puppet, and that was David Cameron and Nick Clegg. And Nick Clegg was obviously David Cameron's puppet because they, formed an alliance, but everyone knew that he was just a puppet.
Who was in charge?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some gloomy writers on the roster, and we've worked with a couple of gloomy writers, and they won't mind me saying that really, but there is no, I feel really saddened, or that I can't say to a writer, this is the process. If you do this, 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 and this, you'll get a commission. If you do this and this, we might have a conversation. What tends to happen, when there's a script just opposite me I'm looking at, and it's just not us. It's just not, someone sent in a script that it's just, there's no research gone into why they've sent it to us, because it's, you would look even what, if you looked at our 3 current shows on our website, you would just see that it doesn't fulfill any of that, So a lot of it though is about an organic osmotic process. So the Play About Wrestling came about through a relationship with an artistic director who was looking to work with us and a writer of colour, because we were going to put together a creative team, a really diverse creative team of quite early career artists as a platform for their work. So that came about through a number of different strands, and again, it wasn't planned by us. We happened to be around and fit in with that. Show we did called Shed Crew a few years ago, that was a script that landed on our desk. I'd read the book, Rod had read the book. This script came unsolicited from a writer we'd heard of, and it was just perfect for us. So I would love to be able to say, this is the process, follow the guidelines on the website and that will get you past first. It's just not. It's so hit and miss and chancy, which, I'm sorry for any writers listening, is not helpful at all.
I mean, do you think part of that though is that there's no either ecosystem or organization there? There's no route into it that of like how you can do that. So for example, if you're starting up a business and the first thing is like you have your business idea, you have some kind of business plan, you register with Companies House, and then from there you kind of fall into networking or whatever, because the path is there and there's the infrastructure's there, the landscape's there, the culture's there for it. Do we not have all the ones that are there in terms of like writing workshops and stuff? Like maybe they're just not good enough at, creating the writers and then that material being produced. Like, I mean, like maybe there's a way to do it so that writers can mesh with producers more easily, and you don't have to read loads of, boring rubbish scripts to find the good one,
I mean, there are schemes, some writers' schemes that exist. The Playhouse run them as a company in Bradford called Freedom Studios. They do a writing course. We are.
But do any of those scripts go into anything from there, or are they just like, because I've been on things where someone will be like, oh yeah, I'll read your script and give you some feedback, and then it's like, well, is that it? Now what? Like, do they then go into development? Does someone pick them up? Is there a pathway into anything for any of them?
There will be more of a chance of a pathway than not.
Yeah.
Because there will be some sharings, and out of that might come, the seed of an idea or seed of a venue. So I think they are better to have them than not. We are in a move to try and be more strategic, working with a whole company called Silent Uproar, they're developing a number of writers for work on a larger scale, so not just studio size scale, but mid-scale work, but new writers. So they've done quite a lot of the legwork there, and I think there's definitely some opportunity for us to work with one of those going forward. We produce one show a year, so I don't really like the expression, we don't have the time, but we could be more, what's the word, responsive, I suppose, to asking people to send stuff in. We could be more receptive to these writing schemes to say, send all the writers our way, we'll have a chat. We don't, and I don't know why we don't, but we don't. We are, to say, working with a company called Silent Uproar to help develop some of their writers. They had a team of people, of which we were a small part. They got a number of venues together to help read all the scripts, so it wasn't just 2 or 3 people reading them. And because the other thing about 2 or 3 people reading them all is, I know there'll be certain styles of play that I don't like.
Yeah.
So they're not going to get past me, you know. So having a pool of people is way better, or you stand a way better chance of, you know, of hitting the spot, if you like. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but we could be more strategic about it. We should be more strategic about it. We're not. I think we're on the verge of getting better, though. That helps.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining more, really, because it was quite illuminating having this day of, and some of it was about trying to find, there's no aesthetic to the work either. So you can see any of the 3 shows on our website, they're all totally different. The way they look, the way they sound, their composition, their creative teams, their, you know, what they're trying to achieve. They're all very different shows. So it's great for us, keeps it alive, but for programmers, it's a bit of a nightmare because it's not like Knee High where you know what you're going to get. You know you'll get actor musos, you'll get you know, this take on a classic story. There'll be some singing, there'll be some dancing, there'll be some clowning. That's not what we don't have. You can't say, oh, that's a Red Ladder show, which I think keeps it vital for us and alive. But it feels every time we book a tour, it's, you know, it's almost like reinventing the wheel because people won't just book you on because you're Red Ladder. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I am going to start to wind it up. I want to touch briefly on social media-y stuff.
Okay.
But also, I mean, sort of going back to kind of the script thing before. This is the other thing as well. So the social media stuff, and then that in terms of maybe content management or outreach, and as a way of sourcing potential writers or collaborators or new shows or new venues and that kind of thing. But I also want you to speak a little bit about the Ladderistas and the Ladderista video, and then if you can sort of flag anything that's upcoming that, you know, people should come and see, and then, you know, your sort of social handles and so on.
Yeah. So I don't know what they are.
You can send me them in an email. I'll put them in a link in the show notes.
Yeah. I'm probably the most socially media unaware person in the world. So going back slightly to the conversation about rights, so we also work with an organisation that is very local called Arts at the Arms, and it's a relatively embryonic organisation, but we do put some money to help them stage showcases, I think, of emerging or Leeds-based talent, not necessarily emerging, but Leeds, or certainly Leeds region-based talent, and they're doing a series of 3 evenings, one in Barnsley, one in Seacroft, and one on Kirksall Road, Cardigan Arms, and it's the same show each night for 3 nights, but just in different location. And it could be a poetry, you know, so there'll be, I don't know, maybe 8 different short excerpts. You know, some will be sketches, some will be a song, some will be poetry, some will be narration. So we do support that, and if something were to come out of that process, then that again might be an avenue we'd look at. So in terms of social media, we have a press and PR manager. I suppose because I'm the bean counter, I'm very intrigued by this word profile. And press and PR people love the word profile. It's all about your profile. And I'll say, right, okay. But it's virtually impossible to measure. And I quite like an investment on return, the return on investment. Just doing stuff for profile, I find quite a struggle. I get it, but I can't measure it. So I'm, you know, people have to work quite hard for me to part with any money for profile raising, in inverted commas, initiatives. But things like Twitter are brilliant because it's free, you know, and I just think it's great. And if people can be asked tweeting about us, that's brilliant. You know, we have one of the lads who does Arts at the Arms is also our social media officer. He's quite forensic about Twitter and he's quite scientific about it. So I quite enjoy talking to him about the whole science of how Twitter can work. So there's there's perceptions, rightly or wrongly, about what Instagram can do. There's perceptions, rightly or wrongly, about what Facebook's for and can do. Same with TikTok, which is a weird world I've never inhabited. And Twitter, I don't do Twitter, but I'm quite addictive. So I feel I could just see my life passing away for me if I did Twitter. I just never would have been done. But I do feel it's incredibly powerful. But we have opposing camps on what Twitter's for. I kind of think any social media should sell tickets eventually at some point, or be part of that mix to try and persuade someone to take a chance on coming to see us. Some of the belief is that's not what Twitter is for at all. It's about commentary, it's about social comment, it's about views and reviews. And I kind of think, well, that's great. It becomes potentially echo chamber. That's the problem with that, I think. And maybe it's somewhere in between, a combination, I guess, is having so we split our Twitter feed into Red Ladder and Rod at something or other, I can't remember. So Rod, who's our director, is quite voluble on Twitter. He likes Twitter and gets very involved in Twitter, but would quite often tweet about things that weren't Red Ladder related. And there was a thought within our marketing and comms people that wasn't quite what the Red Ladder Twitter should do. So I kind of stayed out of that conversation because I think there's this word brand, which is quite interesting and loathed by a lot of people in the arts, but actually this will feed onto Ladderistas in a way, because that is our individual giving platform, and that is all about brand in a collective way. That is, it's about being part of our gang. It's about having kind of lined up visions really and ethoses, so it is about very much about brand, but we wouldn't call it that as such. It's all about, we're stronger together, and if you can help us, with some cash, then we can give work to actors, we can offset our, help offset our carbon footprint, we can tell stories at places to people who wouldn't necessarily hear those stories, or they won't necessarily expect to hear their stories being told on stage. So that kind of messaging is all about the brand that is Red Ladder. What people expect us to do, people want us to do, and people are willing to support us to do. So it's all, I guess, inextricably linked. And we just spent a couple of days talking about Ladderistas and how it's quite a passive ask at the moment, and maybe it should be a bit more front and central. So we're gonna have a little look at that in December and just try and energize that as a platform people might like to get involved. There's some interesting conversations, and again, I'm fascinated by all this stuff about belonging, and that some of the board members would say, well, you need to give people something, and then there's other people on the board who say, no, people just want to be involved, it's fine. I don't get involved with an arts organisation because I want something out of them. Because it'd be like, I don't know, giving to a charity that supports donkeys or something. I don't want a donkey. I want them to save donkeys, and if they send me stuff, that's less they're going to spend on saving donkeys, So, but that's different people with different perceptions on the board, which is why.
But they're kind of both right, though. Because the community is like, you think of a lot of theatres that are sustained by like friend groups and so on, which are older people who are donating to the theatre. They go whenever they can and whenever there's a show that they want to see, or they go see everything, but they can't be there all the time, but they're instrumental to keeping it alive. But then, you've got a younger generation of people who are like, I want to follow you, I want to know everything about you, and sort of have some kind of like,
belonging
relationship, whatever it was, like some association with you, some connection with you, some sort of like, I'm involved. But for that, they need that constant, reactive, the feedback. They need the feedback dues to feed back to.
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting one. I also think because we're an itinerant touring theatre company, to be able to offer a member benefits, it's quite difficult really, because I can't say that we're playing Leeds next year. We may not. We'll possibly take a show at the Edinburgh Festival. We'll possibly won't. The show we're touring next year is opening at Leeds Playhouse, so it probably won't come back to Leeds. So if you signed up, I can't say to you, you'll get two tickets to see us in Leeds because our playing Leeds. I might be able to give you 2 tickets for a working men's club in Leeds, but that would be £3 each anyway. So it's not a huge. So
it's a pint.
Well, yeah, it's like more than a pint in.
Well, yeah.
So I'm really interested by the dynamics of individual giving and as to why people do it and what do people expect. And I think what people expect, because we actually do play to a wide spectrum of society. So we do, we have lots of different people engage with us. So I think to try and conjure up a scheme that speaks to everyone probably has to be quite bland in a way. It's a bit Bob Geldof, I suppose. It's a bit, give us your money. This is what we'll do with your money, rather than this is what you'll get for your money. But in a slightly less sweary way. Well, possibly not, actually. I don't know. When we lost our core funding, there was 2 people who started a campaign called Save Red Ladder. Unbeknownst to us, we didn't even know this was being put together. One was the design company we used for most of our, who designed our website and do a lot. We used to do all of our graphic design for shows. And the other protagonist was our press and PR manager, and she was freelance, but she worked 3 days a week with us, I think. So thought of 2 scenarios. One, we got kept in the national portfolio, which is the core funded clients of the Arts Council. And second, what if we get kicked out? They designed this whole campaign called Save Red Ladder. I didn't even know they were doing it. So the day that we found out we'd lost our funding, they launched this campaign. And this was all based around a lot of the little. It's called Give Us a Tenner. And that was what we were asking people to do. And the idea being that if a lot of people gave us a tenner, there's a fighting chance we'd continue. And it was massively successful. We were in rehearsal for a show on the day we found out. So there was a limit to what kind of noise we could make as people. But they kind of did it for us. And it was, I think it was quite a powerful message, because it said to the Arts Council, we said, well, we didn't start this campaign. We obviously, once we found out about it, we knew we'd done it and we joined in, obviously. But it's quite a statement to the Arts Council that an external body would do this about a theatre company that they just cut from their roster. And I think that, and it's quite, I think we got £30,000 eventually, which is a lot of tenors. And I think it said to the Arts Council, oh, no, this is a very well thought of, well-liked company. Have we actually done the right thing here? So, we were included back in the portfolio 3 years hence, which was great. So I think there was quite a powerful message that came about through that fundraising campaign. And so we worked with a fundraiser who used to fundraise at the Royal Armouries in Leeds. He's also worked for Eureka in the Children's Museum in Halifax. Royal Armouries also its sister organisation is Tower London, so he used to fundraise for the both. So he's very well thought of and very well versed in trusts and foundations, but also individual giving schemes. So he's going to help guide us on, And I think what we'll do is just use, there's some talk of, getting someone to be the patron, or to relaunch it, which we'll look into. And we'll ask some actors who you'll have heard of. Well, we might ask Phil Jupiters to do a shout out for us on it. And we worked with Pauline McLean, who's Mrs. Doyle from Father Ted. She was amazing. And I'm sure she'd come up with a really witty, give us your money kind of quote. So
She will.
And the messaging of that will go through all of those platforms, all of the Instagram, the Twitter. Hopefully it will be joined up and scheduled so that it doesn't. I think there's some intelligence that says, I don't know if this is about theatre tickets or whether it's just buying stuff generally, but there's 6 or 7 messages that you need to receive, either overt or subliminal, that turns you into a customer of that particular product. So it might be 7 different emails, but that would be quite boring. But I think there's a drip effect of maybe seeing something at a show, maybe a bit of Twitter here and a bit of Instagram there, a bit of word of mouth. It's all of those kind of intangibles, isn't it? That the thing with social media is and again, this comes back down to, I wish I'd I wish I could pay people more money, was the analytics behind all of this stuff is fascinating, if not a bit kind of big brotherish. But there is a lot of intelligence, I think, as to how people react to and from those messaging applications. So maybe I don't want to know about it. Maybe I just think, oh, fuck, it's too scary and big brotherish. I don't know.
Thank you again to Chris for being my guest. Thanks again to all my guests, and thanks to you, Bugalugs, for listening to this. Next time on Working Hours, I will be talking to someone else. Follow the show on Twitter at Working Hours 3 and on Instagram at Working Hours Pod Leads to find out who and to know when episodes are being released. I'm also on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Simon-Treen, Treen, Treen, or you can go to the company page, which is linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Western Studios are on Facebooky too, as am I. If anybody who listens to this still goes on there at all. Western Studios, by the way, is my podcast company. If you want to make a podcast in Leeds, whether it's for a cause, a publicity campaign, a product promotion, or your own passion projects, then get in touch with me for support and advice and guidance on it. You can speak with a real loiner who is actually in Leeds that you can actually work with on making podcast content, rather than wading through articles and videos and podcasts about podcasts. Western Studios can take your podcast admin, recording, editing, transcription, etc. Got an inkling that you'd like a podcast but don't know where to go from there? Hit me up at makemypodcast@western-studios.com and let's make your podcast. Save the hassle, save the headache, and make your podcast with a Leeds-based, in real-life podcast producer. Or once again, you could be the belle of my ball and join my Patreon. To support the Working Hours project, go to patreon.com/Working Hours Pod right now and sign up to help me in getting 1,000 liners on Working Hours. If I get 2 more Patreons, then I pinky promise I'll start putting more info up there about the show on the reg. If you're listening to this, I assume you have some connection to Leeds, like living here or being from here. If you're such a person, in Leeds or from Leeds, and you haven't done a recording for Working Hours yet, then email me now and let's arrange some time to record your Working Hours episode. This is your show, Leeds. It's all about what you want to make of yourself. If you want to be on Working Hours, we will need a 2-hour window in which to record. I can record in your work time or during your downtime. I have been recording interviews over Zoom for over a year, but I can record offline too. You can appear on Working Hours anonymously, or you can promote yourself and or your company or brand. Email workinghourspod@western-studios.com if you want to be a guest. Add a short bio and some suggestions of your availability to your email, or just send me your feedback, questions, comments and queries about Working Hours. I'm really interested to hear from anyone in Leeds or from Leeds in whatever industry, sector or role you are in. What is your experience? How do you feel about work? What do you like and not like? What do you do, Leeds? Please remember to like, share, follow and subscribe to this show. Please rate and review Working Hours. And I'll see you next time, our kid. Working Hours is presented, edited and recorded by Simon Treen for Western Studios, Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org.